Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar tonight. We're going to give folks a minute here to get logged in, and then we'll start the presentations. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. All right, it looks like we're 1 minute after our start time, so I'm going to get us going. Welcome to our webinar, Mowers, Blowers, and Chainsaws. This is the, I think 4th or 5th webinar in our Electric Lawn Care 101 series. My name is Jo Olson. I do communications here at Fresh Energy, and Fresh Energy is co-hosting the event today with Shift to Electric and the American Lung Association. So before we get started, I want to take a few minutes and do some housekeeping. Just to keep everything in order, we're going to be using the Q&A function on Zoom. So if you haven't used that before, it's just a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. You can type in your question. Everyone will be able to see the question you submit, and if they like it, they can upvote it. So it's a cool way to engage with each other's questions, and the questions that are most likely to rise to the top are the ones that we are going to answer. So be sure to submit them there instead of the chat box because I might not see them if they end up in the chat. So let's see. We're going to do the Q&A at the very end, so stay tuned for that. Probably the last 20 minutes of the webinar today will be dedicated to your questions. And I want to welcome and introduce our guest speakers. So today we have Jukka Kukkonen with Fresh Energy and Shift to Electric. We have Lisa Thurston with the American Lung Association and special guest Bjork from the Conservation Corps of Minnesota and Iowa. We are going to be seeing a lot of Bjork and Jukka's garages. They are very cool. About halfway through, we will stop sharing the PowerPoint and do some product demos in their garages, and then we'll also be hearing from Lisa about health benefits of switching to electric. So as you can see, we'll be talking about a lot today. And before we get started, I'm going to push a poll to your screen. So a poll should pop up that asks you a little bit of background. Were you planning on purchasing an electric mower, leaf blower, or chainsaw before attending this webinar? And if everyone could answer, I will give you 10, 15 seconds to do that, and then I will push the polling results back to you because I think that's always really fun. So today we're going to be talking about advances in electric technology, the clean air and health benefits of going electric, additional benefits, what type of equipment is on the market, things you need to consider when making purchasing decisions. And then we'll also talk a bit about battery capacity, electricity, and care and maintenance. And then finally get to your questions as well. So with that, I'm going to end the polling here, and I'm going to share the results. It looks like we've got some dedicated electric yard equipment owners in the room looking to learn more. Maybe even during the Q&A section, we'll be able to talk about products that folks don't have. And I think I'm ready to turn things over to Jukka. All yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Jo. So good evening, everyone. And thanks for joining us today to talk about electric lawn equipment. And a couple of things I wanted to share with you first that are helping us to have all of these options in the market. And first of them is the battery tech advancement. Battery technology has really advanced a lot in the last 10 years. The prices have come down quite a bit. Also, the energy density has increased, so we can have a smaller, lighter batteries available for these machines. So batteries that used to cost like, I have one battery here. This is I think this is about 280 watts, the watt hours. This battery, this might have cost like $300 back in 2010, and now it costs less than $50. So that really enables us to have these tools available for us, and that's great. The other thing that is happening right now is our electricity production is moving to renewable energy. So here's an example. For example, Excel Energy's graph of their carbon emission reductions over the years. So if you look at from 2005 to today, how fast it has already dropped, and still continues to drop, because they're closing their coal production way and moving into renewable energy, and that'll clean up our electricity quite fast. So that's another benefit of moving into electric lawn equipment. If your systems and your tools that you're using don't emit anything, the electricity production also is getting cleaner all the time. So that's great. Next slide, please. All right, next I'll hand this to Lisa Thurston from American Lung Association. She'll talk about air quality related issues and advances that we can see when moving to electric lawn equipment.
Great, thanks, Jukka. So as he said, I'm Lisa Thurston, and I'm the Senior Manager at the American Lung Association, and also support and coordinate the Twin Cities Clean Cities Coalition, or I like to call it TC4. I'm going to talk about air pollution associated with lawn care equipment, what kind of emissions are created, and why you should pay attention to this. Next slide. So before I get to the issue, I wanted to take a moment to address why I, with the American Lung Association, am involved in air quality. The American Lung Association mission is to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. And one strategy under that is to improve the air we breathe so it will not cause or worsen lung disease. Our office in St. Paul also coordinates the Twin Cities Clean Cities Coalition, which is one of nearly 100 coalitions throughout the country in the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities program. The coalitions are made up of stakeholders working to foster nation's economic, environmental, and energy security by working locally to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel-saving technologies and practices. And this can be done through use of alternative fuels such as biofuels and electricity, and other strategies that reduce our country's dangerous dependence on petroleum, such as this presentation tonight. Next slide. So what many people don't realize is that emissions from mobile sources, the vehicles and equipment we use almost every day, are the largest source of pollutants in Minnesota. And that's why we focus our efforts on fuels and vehicles. So air pollution affects everyone, but can be especially harmful to the young and elderly, as well as anyone with respiratory conditions such as asthma and COPD. People of color and low-income communities are also disproportionately impacted, and this is true in part because these communities tend to have higher rates of air pollution and higher rates of respiratory conditions and other health conditions that are worsened by air pollution. So they are also more likely to live and work in areas with higher levels of air pollution, such as busy roadways and highways. So there's also been growing evidence that seems to demonstrate that people who live in these areas with higher levels are more adversely affected by COVID-19 as well. Next slide. As you may know, the Environmental Protection Agency sets standards for the amount of each pollutant that can be in the air without endangering health. Every 5 years, the EPA reviews these standards and decides if the most recent science shows that the standards can be set lower in order to protect health. For ozone, that review happened in 2015, and in fact, their science review panel found that scientific studies demonstrated a need for lowering the standard from where it was to the currently 70 parts per billion, as noted on the chart here. Some communities are currently close to that standard at 68 parts per billion, but none exceeded at this time. So as long as we continue to keep our air pollutants at this level, we will remain in attainment. But keep in mind that does not mean that our air is as healthy as it should be. And as a health organization, the American Lung Association believes a level of 60 parts per billion would be best to protect the health of Americans. Particulate matter is a similar situation to ozone, where our current levels in Minnesota are near the standard recommended by the EPA by the Clean Air Science Advisory Committee. And so we need to continue our efforts to reduce levels of pollution in order to protect the health and as well as remain in attainment. Next slide. So now I'm going to just dig into pollution associated with the lawn care equipment discussing today. According to the Utah Department of Environmental Quality, roughly 800 million gallons of gas are annually used by Americans mowing their lawn. And at least 17 million gallons of gasoline are spilled annually just filling this equipment. And this fact can be applied to all the equipment, with spillage and fuel theft being major costs of fleets and for fleets and consumers. And also shown here are graphs provided by the MPCA showing the breakdown of the pollutants. So on the left is a bigger picture, and on the right pie graph shows the breakdown of the VOCs per category. Next slide. So according to the most recent study conducted by the EPA, this equipment emits a significant amount of pollutants, as we've been talking about for the past 5 minutes here. Over the course of 1 year, approximately 26.7 million tons of pollutants are emitted by gasoline-powered garden and lawn equipment. And these are very large numbers, and they can be especially important considering that the source of emissions is in such close proximity to the actual equipment operator, such as you or myself. And while not everyone may think about the ways that their gasoline-powered equipment impacts their health, I would like to talk specifically about the health impacts of 3 pollutants that folks probably are less familiar with, including particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and volatile organic compounds. Next slide. So the particulate matter produced by gasoline-powered lawn equipment has a range of sizes, and the really small matter is of most concern. The particles that are smaller than 2.5 micrometers in diameter in particular. This matter is called PM 2.5, and you can see in this visual that 20 parts PM 2.5 particles can fit across the width of a single human hair. So PM 2.5 can get into and irritate your eyes and airways, and it is also small enough to get deep into your lungs and cause problems with the respiratory and cardiovascular systems. Short-term exposure to fine particles can cause a variety of health problems, as shown on the previous slides, and over time, breathing fine particles in the air increases the chances of COPD, chronic bronchitis, cardiovascular disease, or lung cancer. Next slide. So volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides that are emitted by this equipment are significant pollutants because of their contribution to the formation of ground level ozone. The VOCs react with the nitrogen oxides to create ozone molecules, and UV radiation from the sun speeds up the reaction, which is why ground level ozone production is higher on hot, sunny days. And with this exposure to ozone, it's likened to a sunburning of the lungs and can trigger or exacerbate asthma and other lung conditions, which can then lead to emergency room visits and hospitalization. Next slide. So using an electric lawn mower and other electric equipment is a great way to reduce the pollutants that you generate and that you expose yourself to. And this document shows that there are currently many models available. And so we've compiled 2 information lists to help you with your research. The first list is of battery-powered mowers that are currently on the market. And the second list is electric corded mowers and is the same format. So both of these lists are available at electriclawninfo.org. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Yuka. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Those lists that Lisa mentioned there, that they have put together of electric lawnmowers are just great. Just check them out at the electriclawninfo.org. I have here, for example, the battery-powered one, and there's 6 pages in this. So there's a lot of different equipment already available in the market. So no need to worry about that. You don't have the choice. You have plenty of different options there to look into. So other benefits that come from lawn equipment, we wanted to just share more of this information. First is less energy used. I'll actually do a little calculation there how little energy we actually need for using electric lawn mowers, and the same applies to other equipment too. No emissions. You don't have any local emissions. You as a user don't have to inhale anything. Your neighborhood doesn't have to smell when you're mowing your lawn. It's good for the city, of course, and for our planet overall. They're much quieter. My neighbor, for example, said that he didn't like to mow his lawn early in the morning during the weekends, especially when he had his gas mower. Now with his electric lawn mower, he can go anytime. Doesn't matter, because no one can actually notice him when he's doing it. So that's great. It's good for you. It's good for the neighborhood. Less vibration. There's no internal combustion engine anymore running there, so that's much less vibration in that way. And the good thing is that you don't need to mess with gas. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to store it, and you don't have to have those gas cans just off-gassing and the units off-gassing in your garage. It's much nicer to have a gas-free garage than having any of that. The good thing about electric lawn mowers and other equipment is that they always start. You don't have to be pulling the cord endlessly and being frustrated with the machine. It just starts. Works always. They are cheaper to use, so I'll do a calculation on that. Very easy maintenance. Hardly anything to do with them. We'll talk today about chainsaws, especially because Björk is sharing her experiences here. So she'll share with us what kind of a maintenance she's doing for her saws. And then they're lighter weight usually, depending on what kind of machine, but most of them, yes. And they're easier to store. For example, mowers, you can just pick them up, put them upright, and put them against the wall. They take much less room that way, because you don't have to worry about the oil or gas spilling out of them. All right, could I get the next slide, please? Let's talk about the battery capacity, because that's the thing that you have to kind of consider when you're looking into the mowers or other equipment if you want to do comparisons. Usually manufacturers tell how many volts the system is, what's the voltage of it, and then they talk about amp hours. And then you're like, okay, well, if I know the amp hours, this unit has 4 amp hours battery and that has 6 amp hours battery, are they the same? Well, they are the same if the voltage is the same. But the only way to compare different units is to actually do a little math here, but it's not very complicated, so don't worry about it. What you do is you do volts times the amp hours and you get watt hours out of it. And that's the actual capacity of the battery. It's the voltage times the amp hours, then you get the watt hours, which is a really clear capacity of it. So example, this battery that I have here, this is a 56 volt battery, and it's 5 amp hour battery. Both of those are shown in this battery, and then you do the math there, 280 watt hours of energy in this one. You could take another battery and then do the same math, and then you can compare, okay, this is how much energy that this battery has, and this is how much the other one has. That way you can see what's the expected running time that you can get out of those systems. So battery capacities usually range from 100 to 400 watt hours. And if you want to do a little math of how much you can mow with, if you're using a mower, I would say just do a times 15. So if you have 1,500 square feet in non-self-propelling, you can do that with 100 watt hours of energy. And with 400 watt hours, you can do 6,000 square feet. Normally the city lots are minus 1.5, and it probably, I calculated after I take all the houses and others out, it's less than 3,000 square feet. So probably less than 200 watt hour battery would be fine for my mowing, just to give you an idea. And then when it comes to the cost, 1,000 watt hours is 1 kilowatt hour, as we know, and 1 kilowatt hour of energy costs you about 12 cents. So this one is this one charging, this one takes less than 300 watt hours, so it's less than 4 cents to charge it. So if you do a little math here, if average city lawn is 3,000 square feet and it takes about 2,000 watt hours to move it, and assuming some inefficiencies in the process, let's say that you need 250 watt hours to charge it. This means that you can mow your lawn 4 times with the 1 kilowatt hour of energy. So it costs you 12 cents. So you can mow your lawn 33 times for $1. I definitely have not mown my lawn 33 times this summer. So it's well under $1 that my mowing has cost me this summer. All right, could I get the next slide, please? So battery compatibility, there really aren't standardized batteries between the different manufacturers. So every manufacturer has a little different battery, either voltage or the size and so forth. So truthfully, what happens is that when you're looking at one tool, you probably should be looking at other tools that the manufacturer provides so that you know that they work for you if you want to, because you pick up one, you usually end up buying a second one from the same manufacturer because you want to use the same batteries. Of course, if you use corded units, then that's not an issue. It's the same kind of cord, no matter which unit you get. But with the batteries, you want to look at the lineups there. And I have to say, manufacturers have really good options nowadays. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But definitely, I would say if you know that you use certain tree tools a lot, look into what those tools are from those manufacturers that you are considering, to do a little comparison, and then you know, okay, that might work best for my use case. Could I get the next slide, please? So first, talk about a little bit of mowers. First question is, of course, are you get a corded or cordless lawn mower? I would recommend choosing a corded mower if you want a very affordable mower. You can get a new ones between $100 and $200. Lisa here just told us that she bought one used one for $10. So you don't have to buy a new one always. You can buy something used, and you can get really good deals on those. The good thing about these also is that because they don't have a battery, they are really light. They're really light to move around. But your challenge is you have to have outside outlets where you can plug the extension cord easily in, and then you have to be willing to deal with the cord. It's a little bit of a hassle, but if you can do it, it's fine. If you don't mow your lawn too often and you're okay with the cord, sure, that's fine. I've used those for years. Then I would recommend considering battery mower if you don't want to deal with the cord, and or if you don't have the outlets available. That's the other reason why you probably would want to go with the battery mower. If you want to have a self-propelled mower, then you need to get the battery one, because those are the only ones that are available in self-propelled. And then of course you can use the same batteries for other yard equipment too. If you're thinking about buying other yard equipment with the battery powered, then getting a mower that has is a battery powered too probably makes sense. Could I get the next slide, please? How about the blowers? I'll show you a couple of examples later from my garage here, but there again, you can choose either corded or cordless. And if you want to choose a corded one, then you can definitely find really affordable. It says mower there, it should be blower. Anyways, they start from $50, so they are not really expensive at all. I think you have a hard time finding anything over $100. I'm sure there are some. Some of them actually have the backing and mulching option. So if you want to use them also for sucking the leaves or any extra stuff, then these usually you can find with backing and mulching options. Again, you have to have accessible outlets and you have to be okay with dealing with the cord. Usually not a huge deal. Then choosing battery mower if you use it often. If you really use that blower often, battery ones are so much easier to deal with. You don't have to play with the cord with it, and then again you can use the same battery with other equipment. So that's the other thing. You can buy one. Let's say that you bought the electric lawnmower with the batteries. Then if you want to buy a blower, you don't necessarily have to buy one with the batteries. They sell you the ones that they call tool only. So then you don't get the battery and the charger, and it's cheaper that way. And then you can use the same batteries that you use with the mower. All right, next slide, please. Then when we talk about choosing a chainsaw, what are the things that you should be considering there? Think about what kind of cutting and how much will you be doing. For example, in my case, I use chainsaw maybe 3 times a summer, something like that. I don't use it a lot. So for me, it doesn't really matter too much. I have a corded one because I just don't need it that much. I use it right by the garage. So that's the thing. So if you don't use it often, you can find something cheaper, corded, works okay for you. If you use it a lot, then getting a cordless battery one is totally different thing. You can think about the bar length. Bar length is where the bar is the one where the chain goes around. So longer the bar, more useful it is for heavier duty work, and you can do more cutting of actual trunks of the tree and so forth with it. In my case, I have just a very small short bar length because it works for me for the things. I just cut the small branches that I cut from the tree, and that's enough for me. But if you do more, then you want to consider something longer and bigger. Then battery size. Of course, if you get a bigger battery for your mower, for your chainsaw, then you have a longer running time for it. But then also it's a little heavier, so the weight thing there is. My corded mower that doesn't have a battery is even lighter, so it's easier to use. Not that it makes much of a difference for just occasional use. Manufacturer you consider for the battery compatibility, so you can see what kind of batteries they have in the lineup. So that's one thing there. And then if you want to use pole saw too, some of these hobbyist units like I will show can actually be connected to the pole. So then you can use the same saw for poles. Works okay for hobbyists at home, but more professional units, you buy a separate pole saw to use for that. And then of course look into the warranty of the units too. So that's one thing to consider there. Next slide, please. Then chainsaw technology, maintenance and safety. Chain lubrication is one thing that you want to look into how that's done. All of these chainsaws need a lubrication for the chain. And in mine, that is the cheap hobbyist tool, you have to press a pump there to chain it manually or lubricate it manually. It only works if you do it occasionally and every now and then. That's okay for that. If you use it more often, you have to have it automatic lubrication, which is true for most of these saws nowadays. That's what they have, and it's also a safety issue because if the chain would overheat, then it would potentially could cut and be dangerous in that way. Chain tension, you should look into how to change, what's the correct chain tension and how to change the chain tension. We can talk about that also in our garage section to show you what that means and how that should be done. And it depends on what kind of saw you have, how easy it is to do. Nowadays, many of these saws, it's really easy to do. So it used to be you have to take your tools out and work around it. No, nowadays with some of these, you just change and just turn a knob and you can do it that way. Then also chain sharpening. It's a good thing to learn how to do that. And Björk will share us how that's done, having all the tools there. And then kickback guard, we can also show what that is, and a chain brake. Those are very important features for the saws, especially if you use it a lot. Kickback in a chainsaw is if you use the tip of the blade there, the bar end there where the chain goes, it can when you're using that one, it can grab the wood there and kick it back up. And at that point, there should be a safety system that turns the chain, stops it immediately there. In traditional machines, it used to be a mechanical brake there that stopped the chain. Now with these electric ones, it's actually oftentimes electric brake. And I tried it with my friend's saw yesterday, works perfectly. It stops it right away. So that's important feature. And then also safety equipment, wear right protective gear, and Björk will show you a little bit more about how it's done right there. All right, next slide. Great, so we'll let Björk continue from here, sharing real life experience about these.
All right. You hearing me? Excellent. So I'm Bjork from Conservation Corps, Minnesota. I'm a field coordinator for our Central District Young Adult Program, which means I work with our AmeriCorps crews around the Twin Cities, crews of 18 to 25-year-olds doing natural resources project work. We currently have 10 active crews and have had up to 14. We had 4 summer crews this year. It's a great way for young folks to learn about natural resources work. I was a member in 2017 and 2018, working primarily with chainsaws on boats, as well as serving on hurricane response crews in Puerto Rico and North Carolina. So if you have any 18 to 25-year-olds in your life, anybody listening, let them know about Conservation Corps if they have an interest in the environment or natural resources. We're currently recruiting for our 2021 year. I pulled this photo from our COVID-19 preparedness video where we showed some of our best practices because it was the only decent picture I could find of our battery-powered pole saw. That particular Corps member is about 6 feet tall, so you can see just how tall that pole saw is, and it extends probably another 5 to 6 feet from that. Next slide, please. So at the Corps, we use a great variety of power saws. We have much larger gas saws. We have these smaller gas saws that you can see on the left and on the top. We like to give them punny names. This one's called Mr. Steal Your Girl. All of our tools are Steel brand. We prefer the brand for their power and reliability. So out of about the 50 power saws that we have in our arsenal in my district, 8 of them are these great little electric battery saws on the right and on the bottom in my comparison photo here. We are starting to get these in the hopes of replacing our small gas saws because they're a great tool, a great green addition to our conservation work. As you can see, they're basically about the same size as our smaller gas saws, but they are significantly lighter, which makes a really big difference when you're out in the field carrying it all day. You can feel in the battery saw that they do have a little bit less power than the gas saws, but on the really small saws like this, it's not monumentally noticeable. And these are just a really great tool for cutting smaller wood. So next slide. So this is one of my Corps members a couple weeks ago working on a project where we built an outdoor classroom for a preschool. So the crew members did some smaller technical work with the battery saws. That's one of the battery saws. I cut some larger pieces of wood with one of our really big gas saws, and then they cut out little stools and smoothed out the logs to make them into play pieces for the preschoolers with the battery-powered saws. They're also really great for cutting buckthorn, which I think is the next photo. So a significant number of our projects are based on cutting buckthorn or cutting other invasive species. And many of the target plants that we'll be cutting down are not huge trees. This is Sam, one of my crew leaders who works down in Jordan, standing next to an oak, and then a lot of this bush right in front of him is some buckthorn that he was going to cut away from the oak to make more space underneath that nice tree. So the battery saws are just a great tool for cutting smaller trees like the buckthorn or cutting oriental bittersweet vines. They're great for lots of these invasive species projects. You know, it's all about choosing the right tool for the job. And so, of course, if I'm going to fell a large tree, I'm probably going to want to go to my big gas-powered saw. But for crawling around on my knees all day out in a dense thicket of buckthorn, one of these little battery saws is just the perfect tool. Next slide. This is one of our youth crews out in a beautiful prairie doing some training. They don't get to use saws. Yeah, the battery life on the electric saws is really solid. We usually go through a couple in a day. You know, the crews are bringing multiple batteries out, but the batteries for these are 225 or so kilowatt hours or whatever. I don't often think about the technical numbers. I just kind of think about how long they last. But it's like a 2-hour battery, I believe.
Well, that's good information. 220, you said 225 watt hours and 2 hours of use out of it. So that's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Next slide. So this is a crew walking out into the field. We often have to hike a ways out with our equipment. So it's nice to just slide a battery into a backpack rather than having to mind the gas can all day. Of course, for lubrication, they do still need the bar oil liquid, so that has to be taken out. But for working in a crew group like this, my favorite thing about the electric saws is how quiet they are. Of course, we're still using ear protection just to make sure that we're not exposing ourselves, especially when we're running the chainsaws all day. That noise can really be detrimental to the hearing. But when working in a crew, or for me, I do all of the training for our new members, and being able to actually hear someone yelling over the saw is super helpful, especially during teaching when you need to make a correction in real time or get someone's attention when they're working nearby and running a saw. It's also really excellent to not have that exhaust. Again, when you're crawling around on your knees in a thicket of buckthorn all day, you do start to notice how stinky and how harsh that exhaust is. And it's just very refreshing to spend time getting the work done, but without that irritant. Do I have any more slides, or shall we go to the garage? Yeah.
I think we're ready to enter garages.
Excellent.
I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And Bjork, I think we are going to hit your garage first. So I'm going to feature your video. And all right, that's what folks should be seeing. So would you want to walk us through some of your chainsaws and pull saws?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got one of our battery saws here, the Steel 160C battery. It's a cute little guy, 12-inch bar, 8-inch chain, which I can talk about more with sharpening. The most important thing about these for me is that they do not have an on-off button. And I've used the Husqvarna electric saws elsewhere, and I really liked that the Husqvarna ones had an on-off button, whereas the Steel, it has a throttle interlock or trigger interlock. I guess it doesn't really have like a throttle. So that has to be activated, and the chain brake has to be disengaged in order for the chain to run. But once the battery is in the saw, it is armed, it is live. So we always make sure that we have all of our personal protective equipment on before putting a battery in the saw. I'm wearing my Kevlar chaps. I think I have to back up quite a ways to be able to see. but we always put on our Kevlar chaps before placing a battery into the saw. It just clicks right into the slot, and then it's ready to go. My Bluetooth headphones here are not great ear protection, so I'm also going to put on my helmet so I can put my earmuffs on, and then I will run this. So I'm disengaging the chain brake, engaging the throttle interlock, and that's what it sounds like. It's pretty quiet, pretty pleasant. I kind of think that the battery-powered saws sound like little vacuum cleaners. And that's it. The chain brake is super important again. Once that's activated, the chain will not run. So that's a great safety feature. These bars are designed with this pointier end in order to reduce kickback forces. And of course, if you experience kickback, your wrist will hit the chain brake and stop that. In terms of adjusting the chain tension, the steel is super, super simple. This base plate comes all the way off to remove the bar and chain and for cleaning. But by loosening it, we can then adjust this wheel, which will loosen and tighten the chain. That's super loose. You have to be very gentle with this wheel to preserve the little mechanism underneath, but it's just a very simple adjustment. You want the chain to kind of click back into place. That's how you know it's tight enough generally. Tighten the chip cover down really nice and tight, and you're just fully good to go. So that's just incredibly simple. That is one reason I prefer these steel battery chainsaws over the Husqvarna battery chainsaws. Adjusting the chain tension on the Husqvarna is much more difficult. I think it's kind of a poorly designed tensioner that's really not very user-friendly. And I can show our pole saw now. So we have the steel HTA 85. So we have 2 of these for our crews. I have not really had the chance to use it in the field yet, but these have gotten rave reviews from our crew members because they are a lot lighter than the gas-powered pole saws. These are often used for trail work, trimming branches hanging above our state trails. And, you know, so walking several miles down those trails carrying a really heavy, awkward pole saw is a really tough day. So these have been really popular with our crews. I have to get back quite a ways to see the whole thing because it's just massive. And if I unlock it, perhaps you can see it running. I really don't know what I'm showing from all the way back here. But that is the pole saw. This has a more traditional tension adjusting mechanism, which is actually really loose right now, where you need a wrench, chainsaw screwdriver wrench to adjust that chain tension. We always remind people, don't forget to put bar oil in your pole saw too. Being much, much further away from the bar and chain, sometimes folks forget that it needs lubrication just like any other chainsaw. So these guys are automatic oiling, like Yuka was talking about. So bar oil just goes into this reservoir and comes through a small hole on the bar to keep this lubricated and turning. For maintenance, the main thing with these is just cleaning them out, taking off the chip cover all the way and cleaning out any gunk inside. But otherwise, you know, a lot of the work that I do on the saws for our crews is replacing spark plugs or cleaning out carburetors or replacing the clutch. And on these, there's just so many fewer parts that can break. I occasionally change the tensioning mechanisms if those break, but there's not much to do with these guys. Sharpening is a pretty simple operation. It's highly recommended to wear eye protection and gloves for that because you're filing tiny pieces of metal. But the basics of it is that you just need an appropriately sized round file. This is an 1/8 inch file, which is very, very tiny compared to the ones for our full-size saws. I don't even have a super big one, but this is for a small gas-powered chainsaw. This is for the electric. So it's just a very small diameter. And each tooth is sharpened, pushing away at a 30-degree angle. And you just want to file each tooth evenly, just a couple strokes each and the same number of strokes each. And in order to get a good cut, we take down the rakers, which are the small, flatter, non-sharpened parts of the teeth. We would file those down a tiny bit, about every 4 sharpenings or so, because those measure how much wood the cutting tooth is going to take out of the wood. So it's important that those be slightly shorter than the teeth. Our crews sharpen these probably every day. This chain looks like it's almost ready to be retired. The teeth are getting really stubby and short from being sharpened and used so much, but it's great to see that use and great to know that the crews are really putting these to work, getting really good use out of them, and enjoying using them in the field.
Thank you.
That's
Yuka?
excellent.
Yuka,
Yeah.
should we go into your garage? Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Bjork.
We can
All
we
right.
can move here next.
Yuka, is
So,
your garage as cool as Bjork's?
it depends on how you look at it. I knew that you'll give me a hard time about this, but it's just a matter of perspective. Mine is clean. Anyways, this is not a working garage the same way as Bjork has there, and it was really cool to see all the things in there and actually get the real life experience and how these can be sharpened and all of that. I'll share a couple of chainsaws that I have here, and I'll go into the other equipment after that. But this here is my chainsaw that I use at my home. And as you can see, it's really light. It hardly weighs anything. It's small and it's corded. So you just plug it into a normal extension cord, but it does the job. It does the job for me. I don't need anything more than this because I use it so occasionally. So something like this might be okay for your use, depending on how much you use for it. The other good thing with this unit is that it actually can be made as a pole saw too. So I have a pole here that is designed to work with this saw. So you just kind of like strap this into this pole, and then you can use this as a pole saw too. Again, it wouldn't work in a commercial application the same way as Bjork had there. That would probably break in 2 days of work, so it wouldn't work there at all. But if I use it once a year for that work, it's fine. So that's the difference there. Then I have, I borrowed, my friend has an electric chainsaw here that is a little bit bigger, a little bit more more useful for bigger work. And this is actually quite a bit bigger, because I think, Björk, did you say that your saw was 12-inch bar there? Yep. So this is actually 16-inch bar. So this is has a quite long bar and much stronger, much bigger, probably even bigger chain there too. This one works pretty much the same way. You have the battery that goes on top here, and the same way it goes in there. You just push it in place. This one actually happens to have, wow, this gets off focus a little bit. This one has a button there to turn it on and off. It also has the same kind of safety feature here, so you have to press that safety button there before you can turn it on there. It has automatic oiling. So here's the oil container here, and here you can see how much oil there is. So that's easy with this one. And it has a really good chain brake system here. As I said, it's electric, but it does a really good job. I tried it yesterday when I was running it, and I pushed that, and it stops the chain immediately. Again, this is to prevent, if you would be using the saw so that you're using this end of the saw, there's a potential that it kicks the saw up with the force, and at that time you hit your wrist there and it turns the saw off. So that's the kick brake. So that's good feature in these saws. The other thing that I really liked, this has the same kind of chain tensioning system. It's very easy to use. You just loosen here one screw, and then with this other dial here, you can just adjust the tension, and then just, that's maybe a little tight here, a little bit looser. Oh, now it's too much. There. Now it snaps nicely, as you said. All right, there we go. We'll put it there. So that's that. I used it a couple of times today for some little work. Works great. So those are the chainsaws that I have here in my garage. The other equipment that I have here, I have, of course, the mowers, and I'm showing you one mower here. This one happens to be an Ego mower. Why do we have certain brands here? We just happen to have these. My friend happens to have a Greenworks. We're not really promoting any brand over any other. Just happens to be these. But I've heard really good things about many different manufacturers. So here with this one, you have the battery. Battery goes right in here. You just put it there, put the key in place, and it's ready to go. So very easy to use. Then you pull this one back and it turns on. When I'm done with mowing, I usually just take the battery out of it. Then I will put this one in here, the bar, turn it down, lift it up, and store it. So that's how easy it is to work with, and it's pretty light, so you can easily manage it to put it to store wherever you want. This also has, when you're using it, it has a height adjustment with one bar, so it's easy to do the height adjustment for this one. Maintenance-wise, for these electric mowers, because you can lift it up like this, it's easy to clean. Make sure that you have the battery off for safety reasons, before you go into this blade cutting area here, but you can easily clean it, and then also look at the sharpness of the blade and sharpen if needed. You can even use a file to sharpen it every now and then, and you can keep it sharpened all the time, or then just remove it and take it to the sharpening. So that's about mowers. So as I said, very easy to use of those. Then blowers. I think we should talk about the blowers next, because that's one of the items we were talking about here. I'll first show you my old blower here. That is over 20 years old. This is a very simple Toro corded one, so cord goes right back here. It's 20 years old, still works great. It's still an awesome thing. That's the cool thing about this. Still starts every time, no problem whatsoever. If I would have a 20-year-old internal combustion engine unit, most likely it wouldn't work anymore, or I would have had to do quite a bit of work for it. Pros of this one is that this can actually do the backing too, so you can actually change their a different equipment here to put it, make it so that you can use this to suck the leaves up and they go into the bag, so you can, it multis them and puts them in the bag. I don't use this feature too often. Only times I use it is when if I want to clean, if I have like areas where I have rocks and I want to use to clean those rocky areas. This is pretty good in cleaning those because otherwise they are hard to rake. So you have to go there by hand to pick up leaves or any other things. With this one, with the suction, that works really well. So that's where I use that. The bad thing about this, because it's 20 years old, it's a pretty noisy machine. It's not the quietest in the whole world. This year, I got myself then a battery blower, and this is a eco thing. The cool thing about this is it's really light. As you can see, I can just with one finger I can lift this one up. It's extremely easy to work with. Then when I put the battery in there, so I don't have to play with the cord with this one. You just take the battery, plug it in, and this baby is ready to run. I kind of like this a lot. It makes it so much easier because if I need to do anything in my yard, I just grab this one, take the battery, put it in there, go and do the job, come back, and it's done. So that's what it sounds like. I also use this now in many different things that I didn't use it before. For example, if I use my table saw, this is very easy to just take and clean the table saw afterwards because it's again so easy to work with. So that's why I like that quite a bit. Other things that we have here, we have one of these head trimmers here, and this one I use once a year usually. So this one is corded. I don't need anything more than that. I bought this from used for like $30, and I'm happy to help share it with my friends or relatives anytime they need it. So that's a good and easy thing to with that. And then I have here trimmer, so more traditional trimmer here, and this one is again the same light, very light unit overall, and then you just plug in the battery here at the other end and it's ready to go. So this one the same thing, very simple, easy unit to work with, and very light, so I like it too. Again, I don't use it too much, but this I think would be very good even if you would use it much more. And then in addition to that, we have actually a battery-powered snowblower here and traditional corded snowblower that is again probably over 20 years old. Still works just fine. But we have a special snowblower exclusive coming in November. So that's when we are going to be talking more about those machines and different tools related to that.
Yes.
Joe, should we go to question and answers? What's the next part here?
First, I want to plug our upcoming webinars and also the website where you could find links to all sorts of information and the spreadsheets that were also discussed today. The EV Owners Panel is tomorrow if anyone has a free schedule, but don't worry, we've got another one coming in October. And as Yuka mentioned, snowblower exclusive in November. So you can find where to register for all of these at electricaloninfo.org or at fresh-energy.org when you click on events. And with that, I think we can do Q&A. Did I miss anything, Yuka?
Well, I would just still mention the utility rebates that are also mentioned in this slide.
Oh, yes.
That if you are thinking to add some electric lawn equipment, check out your local utility company if they are electric utility company, if they have some rebate programs going on. Some of them do. For example, Dakota Electric and East Central Electric at least have these programs. And then if you are interested in powering all of these systems with solar panels, then join also for our EV solar and storage owners open house on September 28th.
All right, let's do Q&A. All right, so folks can use the Q&A function. I see we've got a couple of questions that came into chat as well, so I'll do my best to hit them all. So, question from Melissa: what was the brand of the chainsaw that you borrowed from your neighbor, Yuka?
Oh, this one was Greenworks.
Okay, great.
And they have a pretty nice lineup of different tools. They seem to have very similar, at least the battery looks very similar to Ryobi, but I don't think they are interchangeable.
And actually, Lisa just reminded me that we have another poll. So quick poll for people to fill out which parts of the presentation did you find to be helpful. And if it's the Q&A portion, just say you're waiting on that. And then the second question is, do you expect to purchase an electric mower, blower, or chainsaw in the next 6 months? So if you fill those out, I see we've got some votes coming in. And I will get our next question lined up. Actually, maybe while folks are thinking about the Q&A, I can ask a question here to you. Yuka, I think I've got a question about mower blades. So Philip says, one thing I've noticed is that my mower blade is aerodynamic. It extends the battery life, but it doesn't draw up the grass that it is laying down. So it doesn't cut as well as the old gas mower. So he's found he has the option to buy a different blade that generates more suction in the mower deck, which he thinks will probably do a better job mulching and drawing up the leaves this fall. However, he thinks that the battery time on his mower will be shortened. Do you think that is the case? Will it hurt the battery life?
Very good question. Come back next month to tell us how it works. I don't have experience of that, but that's true. Some of these producers, manufacturers provide different kind of blade structures there for different uses like this. So that's definitely a good question. I think actually I have seen a video where they did some kind of testing on this one, and at least talked about the efficiency of it. So check out our EV or electric lawninfo.org. I think we have the review video there that talks about this. So that might have some information, but otherwise test it out and let us know next month. We'd be curious to hear about it.
Perfect. And I just reshared the poll results thanks to everyone who filled it out. So it looks like people really liked the discussion of what's on the market and care maintenance, also the health benefits. Actually, there was a vote for pretty much everything. And it looks like most people are planning on buying something electric in the next 6 months. So that's excellent. Let's see, on to the next question. So Catherine says, I have an Ego lawnmower and string trimmer already. The lawnmower has a bigger battery and the string trimmer has a smaller one. Can I swap these out with the Ego snowblower and chainsaw so I don't have to buy batteries again?
Very good question. I have the same things here. I have the mower and I have the trimmer and I have actually the Ego snowblower there, but I only have the 5 amp hour batteries here. And these are the ones that are used in at least the snowblower that I have there. So that one uses 2 of these 5 amp hour batteries. So if you have, most likely with your lawnmower, you have at least one 5 amp hour or 7.5 amp hour battery. So that you could use in the snowblower, but I'm not sure if it can take the smaller ones, use the smaller ones too. It potentially could, as long as it's 56. As long as it's 56 volts, I think it can use the same. So that should be possible there.
All right, and I've got another question that actually didn't come in through the Q&A, but so you had mentioned rebates for electric utilities, and are there rebates for things that are not lawnmowers? Are there rebates or grant programs? I know someone's messaged us before about like their church that's trying to convert all of their entire fleet to electric for yard care. So are there any programs for non-lawnmowers specific?
I think both of those programs are for all lawn equipment. I'm not 100% sure about the Dakota Electric. I would have to check that, but I think the ECE at least is for all different lawn equipment. So it doesn't have to be a mower necessarily. It can be trimmers and other things too.
Okay. And Bjork, not to put you on the spot here, but did Conservation Corps, I know you said you were looking to perhaps convert more of the chainsaws to electric. Was there a grant program that helped your nonprofit do that, or do you know any of that background? I know that can be kind of an investment.
Yeah, Conservation Corps buys new chainsaws every year. So that's just part of our costs. So I believe we just bought these with our normal budget at our nonprofit. At a previous job I worked at, we got a grant through the state, I believe, that was providing some money for small businesses to change their tools from gas to electric. So we were able to apply as a small company and replace we got some of the string trimmers to replace gas ones, a blower to replace a gas one, and a chainsaw. So those are all Husqvarna brands that we used, and that's how I have the experience with the small Husqvarna battery saws as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And pricing
ahead.
wise, these are not more expensive than the gas ones. Now they start to be actually cheaper in many cases. So there's really no need to think about that. It's an easy decision from that standpoint.
Great. Philip is commenting that his electric lawnmower has more torque than a gas mower. I wonder, is that the case for other yard equipment as well? Is the power slash or torque stronger with electric tools in some cases?
I think it's very comparable in many of these. Of course, when you talk about the chainsaws and you have a long bars and then you have a higher end engines there, you might have a big more power in those. That's totally possible. For anything for everyday use, for just a residential use, these definitely provide you enough power for all that use. So there's no need to worry about that part.
Perfect. Another one from Philip, and this one's going to be a toughie for you, Yuka, maybe, or maybe you already know. DOE developed requirements for small engine carburetors in an effort to reduce emissions. They went into effect earlier in the decade, and a consequence is that carburetors have a much higher probability of gumming up. So you need to be vigilant with carburetor additives, or else you'll need carburetor repair every 3 to 4 years. Anything you want to add to that, Yuka?
I would not want to touch the carburetors anymore. That's what I would add. I mean, I grew up in wrenching these things all the time. I'm automotive mechanic and an engineer, so I know pretty much carburetors and internal combustion engines ins and outs, but totally useless information for me. If I can stay away from it, I'll stay away from it. That's kind of my take on it. I just don't have any interest. If we have a unit that don't need any of that work, I much rather go with this, just additional benefit than having to rent those. There are other things that you can do in life. You can have other hobbies with technology. You don't have to be going and working with internal combustion engine technology anymore.
Well, and I think, Bjork, you mentioned as well, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but that the electric chainsaws just had fewer things to mess with than the internal combustion ones.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
A, like, care and maintenance standpoint.
Yep, they are totally, just computer controlled and have much less moving parts to deal with. So I'm assuming eventually one of these is going to break and something will go wrong on the inside, and then there might not be as much I can do about it in terms of replacing parts. But it's something where in a year or two of service for these, I haven't had to do major overhauls on any of its basic functions where I might have to replace a carburetor or repair put in a new piston, things like that.
Got it.
And the other thing is that these small engines, internal combustion engines, where they use carburetors and other things, their emissions are just nasty. They are just plain horrible because there's very little emission controls, if any, in any of these. So you get raw exhaust coming out of them, and that's really, really bad stuff. So that's definitely something that I want to be as far as I can.
Great. Yes, and Dale actually has a tip to share with folks that the home store has used tools and usually lots of Greenworks and Ego equipment. So his advice is to buy new batteries because they're often at the home store because the batteries aren't working anymore. But that's the place to go for the actual tools.
I think used ones there are good options there too. Especially the corded ones, you can find really good corded ones for very cheap. And even the battery powered ones, if you know what you're doing, if there's something little wrong, people don't try to fix anything nowadays. Whereas it might be something really minor in some of those. I actually helped one of my friends had a battery lawnmower that was 15 years old, and the batteries had died on it, and he was like, what am I going to do with this? I was like, well, bring it over, I'll take a look at it. So I actually got it here, and I took the batteries out and measured. They were bad. I'll show you the batteries. I have them here. Here, this one still used a lead acid battery, so these are pretty heavy, the batteries set up here, but I ordered a new batteries for it, cost $80, put those in, and the whole system works again, probably another 15 years with those. So it's pretty easy fix because again, the system, the motors themselves, they don't really wear out. So they can last a long time and easy to fix if there's something like that needs to be done.
All right, and I think that's the end of our questions, and we are 4 minutes to our end time. So I think unless anyone has anything to add, panelists, I think we can wrap it up for the evening. All right, I think that's it. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for future webinars. And big thank you to Bjork for taking time and spending some time with us tonight and giving us the ins and outs of electric chainsaws. Catch y'all later.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.